So, Kathy, this is the Easter egg, this little guy. I picked him up at an antique store. He's really heavy and he's a little piggy bank.
He's cute, but he's not an egg.
Yeah, but I think he's really cute. He's really, really heavy. And
Can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Yay, I fixed it!
All right.
Oh my God, I spent like my whole lunch break trying to fix that.
Poor thing.
I think I can hit someone over the head with this thing and do major damage. But
All I can say, Mark, is I don't see my Irish wolfhounds running around your house.
it's like
Well, they could run around, but there wouldn't be a lot. There'd be things, all those candlesticks would go flying for sure.
it's like a China store.
Yes.
How's your puppy doing, Kathy?
He's ambulatory. He's 6.5 months now. He's about 100 and I don't know, I got to weigh him 120 pounds maybe. And he is doing great. And my Newfie's about to have his second TPLO surgery. So
Oh boy.
nothing, yeah, exactly. He had to lose weight though. He gained some COVID weight. So he had a little weight loss before the surgery.
He's the only one who lost weight in quarantine.
Well, only because he was forced to.
My dogs hear me starting to talk, so they all have to congregate back in the room.
Of course. Yeah, mine are outside right now, but the parrots will pick up.
Check this out.
Oh, look at that little fatty. Now there's some COVID
He's
weight.
16 years old. I got him for my dad when he was like 6 months old, and he weighed like 8 pounds, and now he's 26 pounds. Thanks, Dad.
Oh, yeah. Well, Mark will lift up his 20-year-old pretty soon.
This is Daddy. This one's mine. She's 12 pounds. She's healthy.
And my old lady. The cataracts and
Old lady.
Yeah, and I will not be lifting up any of mine.
Well, you can see the chihuahuas are not going to do much damage in my living room.
Oscar breaks my back, though. He's so heavy.
Okay. So,
President Nunes, this is the moderator.
yes.
I will let you know that we did lose member Laredo over lunch. We do still have a quorum. I can keep my eye out for her if you'd like to begin, and I will start the recording again.
Yes, please do.
And I'll
This
text
meeting
her.
is being recorded.
Well, Jennifer is teaching a class right now. So,
Yeah, she had to teach. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think her class is on equine, something equine. But we still have a quorum, so we can proceed. And congratulations to the board members. So far, we haven't had any embarrassing camera slip-ups. That's going to make the news. So keep up the good work. Agenda item 7 is an update on possible action for 2021 legislation. And there's quite a few bills on the agenda, as you can see. And Kathy is a little bit more versed on the timeline. I think that we're very, very early in the timeline of the generation of these magical beasts. So they're all in their larval stages right now, and they haven't quite reached the beautiful butterflies that I'm sure all of them will be. So we may not want to take really definitive, hardcore positions on them just now, because again, they're all very early in the process. So what our thought was, if anyone has any specific questions on any of them, rather than going one by one and discussing them, then I would encourage board members to speak now or forever hold your peace.
Dr. Nunez, there are some concerns that I had with the first ones. If you don't mind, if we can go to start with the first one on that one.
Okay. That is
So
29.
correct. So members, this is very similar to the prior version of the bill by Aguilar Curry from last session. This bill it was actually similar to the initial version of that. And this bill is going to prevent the board from discussing any kind of materials that are provided to the board if they're not posted on the website within 72 hours. So this raises the same kind of concerns that we rose with the last version of the initial version of AB 2028. As you know, that we do our best to post all of the materials as soon as possible. Most of the materials for this meeting were posted on April 7th, so well in advance of the meeting. But there are always things that come up that we want to be able to provide the board specifically from the public themselves. We've had lots of times where public comment, if they're anticipating having any kind of technical challenges, a lot of times they'll send the written comments in ahead of time, and that information has been very valuable in the decision making of the board. So this would, in effect, remove that capability if they provide it to us within that 72 hours from the board meeting. I think we've received some key public participation just yesterday. And I know Bonnie Lutz was providing some really good comments, and she was having some technical difficulties, but she was eventually able to make her public comment. But had she submitted that written comment to me, I would then be able to distribute that to the members so they can consider those comments, but this would remove that capability from the members. And so also a lot of times the legislative analysis for bills aren't even posted within that time frame. So they are posted within that 72 hours, and the way that this is worded, you would not even be able to consider that analysis because it's not posted within that time frame. So I think that this is doing an extreme disservice and actually will end up hindering public participation and the board's ability to consider the public viewpoints in their decision making. So I would recommend a similar motion that you had made for the last similar version of the bill, which was an oppose unless amended position.
And by amended, you're talking about changing the word provided to prepared.
Right. So, and I think that they were trying to get there when they say provided by staff, but what often happens is that members of the public, they don't provide it directly to all of you. They provide it to the staff, who then provides it to the board members. And so we wanted to change the word provided to prepared, because then that captures everything that the staff itself were preparing, but doesn't hinder public participation in anything that the public is preparing. Dr. Bradbury?
So this is obviously, been around for a little while, and I know that sometimes you participate in these discussions with the legislature. Have you talked to them about this, and what was their response to it?
So I haven't had the opportunity to reach out to Assemblymember Cooper's staff on this specific bill. I did, as you know, with Aguilar Curry, so I haven't had that discussions with them about the same kind of concerns. So my idea is to get any concerns from the board, their positions, and then share that with the assembly member and try to work out our concerns. Kathy?
Yeah, hi guys. I just realized on this, I would suggest that we do take a position in opposition unless amended. This bill has gone out of the committee and is into appropriations now. So I think it would be helpful to the Appropriations Committee to understand if it is substantially the same, which I believe it is, the issues for our board and many of the other DCA boards. I don't know if many other ones are anticipating taking a position, but it looks like it's scheduled into Appropes this month, April 21st, like maybe today, I don't know, or tomorrow or something like that. But at any rate, it seems like this would be one that we might want to take a position on, since it wasn't amended in the first committee to do anything that would fix our problems, I don't believe.
Jamie? Dr. Nolan?
I agree with Kathy, but I also think it would be helpful if we wrote a letter, if Jessica was able to write a letter that really specified a few examples that you've already, mentioned to us, that help them to understand the complexity and help them to think through this. I think the other wording that's a little bit irksome is the, as soon as it's provided to the board members or 72 hours, whichever is earliest. Well, that really limits, what can be discussed. And so it would be helpful if they saw examples of that being a problem.
So is there a motion for a position on this?
I'll make a motion to oppose unless amended.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any other comments from board members? Moderator?
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment on AB 29, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists.
I don't see any.
Seeing none, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
It's been motioned and seconded to oppose unless amended. AB 29. Jessica, could you call the vote?
Ms. Bowler,
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury,
Yes.
Ms. Laredo. Oh, I'm sorry, she is absent. Ms. Prado,
Yes.
Ms. Yanis,
Yes.
Dr. Nolan,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Motion carries. The next one, members, just for your information, AB 54 was amended on April 5th to exclude healing arts, so it no longer impacts the board or our stakeholders at all.
And I think AB 1535 is an easy one. That's item 7O.
Yes. Do you want to skip to that, or do you want to go over other comments or concerns that we have with other bills?
Isn't this a bill, though? Isn't this on that list?
It is. So I have, we have no concerns with C or D, but I do have some concerns I wanted to update for AB 339, and then the next one is Cholera's bill, so E and F.
Okay, then we'll take it in order. Let's go with 339.
Okay, so this one was amended in April 15th to remove a lot of the concerns that we initially had. The main concern with this bill, well, let me back up. The bill requires the board to provide both a telephonic and internet-based option for all of our board meetings going forward. And I don't see an issue with that. We are able, as you can see from this, to provide that avenue. It also requires an in-person public comment, physical place, which I don't, unless there's a declared state of emergency. And so I also don't have concerns with that. The biggest concern that we had with the initial version of this bill, that it required the board to offer translation services for each meeting for the 5% of the population in the state's jurisdiction. And so translation services are very, very expensive, and to have to provide it at every single meeting, even if it wasn't requested, I think would be very concerning with our fund. I know that this was another piece of legislation that was discussed with all of DCA programs. They shared the same concerns, that it was going to be very, very costly. However, it's been amended since then to only require that translation services if it's requested. So I don't see that as being so much of an issue. So I don't think that we need to take a position at this point. I just wanted to update you on those amendments, and then we'll continue to watch this closely and let you know if we have any concerns. So the next one would be the Cannabis Bill. That was AB 384. This allows veterinarians to to recommend cannabis. And it was amended on April 15th, and it strikes medicinal use. So in prior pieces of legislation, the board did take supportive amended positions on SB 627. The board had supported veterinarians being able to recommend the cannabis for animal patients, but expressed concerns primarily with the lack of funding and research funding for research on cannabis. And also the last iteration of SB 627, the board expressed concerns about the ability for cannabis products for animals to be sold in recreational facilities. And so I think that those concerns remain with this bill, but I don't know if the board at this point would like to take a position. I just wanted to raise those points for this bill.
I also thought I was curious on this bill. It says that the bill would revise the definition of cannabis products, cannabis concentrate, and edible cannabis product under Marcusa, regulated and enforced by the Bureau of Cannabis Control to include products intended to be used for therapeutic effect or health supplementation use on or for consumption by animals. And then here's the part that I thought was interesting. The bill would define animal for these purposes to mean any member of the animal kingdom other than humans, including fowls, fish, reptiles, wild or domestic, whether living or dead, but would include livestock. So it says that we can use cannabis products on dead animals.
Dead animals.
I'm not sure why that is included in there.
It's weird.
I just thought that was funny.
A little disturbing.
But like I said, we had a was it support if amended or support if amended position?
Yes.
For the bill, we can take the same position, or we don't have to necessarily take positions at this meeting. Kathy, it's if I'm correct, it's really early in the whole process of this all.
Well, it's early in the first house. So I believe, and I also believe we may get some public testimony on this particular bill, looking at the folks that are attending the meeting right now. Where are they now? So it's gone out of the initial committee to appropriations, but it's likely that there will be a lot of input with the legislative committees and members and potential changes to this bill before it finalizes and even gets, it's going to have to go through the Senate as well. Last time, I think we may have taken our position when it was in the Senate, when it was more fully formed. Is that right, Jessica? Yeah. Which would be this summer, would be at perhaps the July meeting.
Would it be beneficial to take a position right now, or would it be more beneficial just to wait? Because I think the general feeling of this board is that we are in support of having cannabis be able to be used by the veterinary community. So if a support position does reflect that support, then it might be wise to support it now.
I would, I would defer right now because I'm not quite sure the details of the bill. Registered support now, I'm looking at the analysis, just as an FYI. The Veterinary Medical Association is in support, at least they were at the committee analysis.
Which VMA?
CVMA.
Okay.
Sorry. And then the Cannabis Industry Association, a number of those folks. in opposition, lovingly and legally, Cannabis Veterinary Society. And that was, believe that's the analysis that went before B&P.
Lovingly and legally is in opposition.
Yeah, on this analysis, yes. And this is an analysis that was done before the April 13th hearing. So it was done April 11th. Again, I'm not quite sure about whether it was amended or anything, but maybe some of the public testimony will.
Okay, Dr. Veterinary.
Yeah, I am a little confused with this about whether it's this is still worded in a way that the product could be sold in both recreational facilities and medicinal facilities. And I think that's probably why those two groups were against it, was because people could get cannabis anywhere without a prescription, is my guess. If that's true, that's what it still says in here. And I tend to agree with that if it's just available at these recreational facilities, it would be very detrimental to consumers because they wouldn't have the guidance. They'd be able to just get it without a prescription and wouldn't even be talking to a veterinarian. So I think that's what the difference is, the big issue here. And I guess the other part was we kept pushing for an amendment to get research put in there, but I don't know that being so strict about that this time around, if the other part gets dealt with appropriately, being strict about having to have the research would be useful. So those are my thoughts on this.
I think our amendments would still be that we would like to see funding for research, and another amendment would be that we would like for it to be sold in medical dispensaries as opposed to recreational dispensaries. I do like the fact that it says that a veterinarian cannot be disciplined for recommending it, and that there is a requirement for the board to have guidelines on the website. I don't recall, did the previous one have the prohibition for veterinarians to recommend it if they are employed by cannabis?
Yeah, I think that's been on both of them because it would be a conflict of interest.
Yeah, okay. So I would say that I don't think we should take a position, but if somebody wants to make a motion to support if amended, I wouldn't be offended either.
Can I say something? I've always felt that it was helpful to have public comment at this point. Is that possible to have public comment on this?
Well, the last time I asked for public comment before a motion, I was frowned upon, but we can try it again and see what happens.
I think this is a little bit different. I think I would like that before I decide on whether a motion should be made.
Okay, moderator, if you would, please.
Absolutely. This is the moderator. I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a comment on this piece of legislation, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. I see an individual with a hand raised who may not be able to locate their Q&A icon. Let's see, Trina Haza, your line is unmuted. Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
We can. You will have 3 minutes.
All right. Hi, everybody. It's great to see everybody. I know you can't see me, but it's good to see most everybody. I am actually speaking directly as the president and co-founder of the Veterinary Cannabis Society. We are the first nonprofit 501c3 organization that really is dedicated to creating solutions that ensure the safe use of cannabis in pets. And we do that through education. We've been working on some advocacy and also really promoting product standards. So we make sure our pets and our patients are getting things that are safe and without contaminations and so forth. And so, as you guys know, Gary, Richter, and I have been through these agenda items with you in the past. And after looking at this bill, initially we really did support it, and then we started to look through it, and there were some things that were concerning, and I wanted to talk to you guys about it and see what your thoughts were. Initially, we liked a lot of the parts. I think Christina Bradbury, you brought up the medicinal dispensary part, and that certainly has been an issue with us. But I think there's one of the big ways to safeguard it is actually there might be a way for everyone to win. And when I say everyone, I'm thinking veterinarians, pet parents, and product companies. And one of the way of doing that is just putting a maximum dose that a pet parent can pick up a product for their pet in a recreational or adult use dispensary. And there is something currently in the Business and Professions Code right now that states that that the maximum dose for, and this is all for humans at this point, is 10 milligrams per serving. That is insane, right? If you can imagine a Chihuahua getting 10 milligrams, and per serving is so arbitrary. It could be one treat is 10 milligrams. A dog could absolutely, a cat could potentially die, right? And so we want to be really, really careful about that. And so one of the things that I did was I reached out to Ash Kalra and reached out to Tim Shu, who both, Tim was lovely to have this conversation with me and just basically say, hey, can we just change this terminology and say 10 milligrams would be great for a human product, but why don't we make it 1 milligram for a pet product? And then what we do is we safeguard pet patients, right? We put a really safe rails around this so we can make sure that if product companies are going to put their products in a medical dispensary in a recreational or adult use dispensary, that we're making sure it's only 1 milligram per serving, which would be significantly safer. And honestly, in my experience of several years of having my oncologic patients on cannabis, I can tell you it's a lot safer. And so that would be one way. And then anything over that amount, and that would be for our severe cancer patients or the horrific, painful dogs that have, let's call it osteosarcoma, I'm biased with cancer, that those dogs, 1 milligram is clearly not going to be enough. If per serving, they need to go to a medical dispensary and pick it up. So there are two items here that we think need to be amended. One is reduce the 10 milligrams of THC to 1 milligram per serving in adult use dispensaries. Cannabis products for animals in excess of 1 milligram will be sold through an M licensed dispensary with only a veterinary recommendation, which that would require then amending the Malcursa to throw in veterinarians, and then create a mechanism by which veterinarians can write written recommendations. And again, that goes through amending Malcursa. So, after, go ahead. Yeah, please, because I'll keep talking. So please, Mark.
When you say per serving,
so
does that mean how much can be dispensed, or
no?
Because
that's the problem.
If I hear per serving, it doesn't necessarily mean that the pet owner is going to read the directions, and if it says give 1 tablet or 1 chew, because that's what's safe, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're going to give.
You're absolutely right. There is a cap at a recreation or adult. I keep saying recreation and adult use. It's the exact same thing. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. There is a cap per container, though, at those. That's what differentiates a medical dispensary versus a recreational dispensary. So right now, my understanding, I don't know if it's changed, but my understanding is 100 milligrams per container. So right now, a human can go get a chocolate bar. I say human, but a person can go get a chocolate bar that's 100 milligrams per chocolate bar. Each serving cannot be above 10 milligrams. So you are correct. A pet product that has the potential of having 100 milligrams per bottle, but it would be very difficult to give a dog that amount, right? I mean, it really is. So that's why we say per serving, per treat, per ml, whatever it may be.
Lab, or are you talking about a Chihuahua? Because the labs will eat the whole bottle.
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. And that's where to be honest, I went through this and speaking to tons of people. I'm trying to make a way that everyone can get something that can help the patients, right? I mean, this has been a struggle for months now, where I'm trying to make it so patients are safe. And I think we all are on the same page that they need to have a recommendation from a veterinarian. I mean, and when I say recommendation, would be ideal that we could write a recommendation, but literally just stating what dose can a dog get that can keep them safe? What products are the ones that are scary, that have been on has had flags from the FDA that people should stay away from? We're all in practice, and Mark, you and I have had this conversation. It's like in LA, people are asking us all the time, and how do we get them away from the ones that are scary and put them toward the ones that have done the due diligence and have done appropriate testing? So we need to be able to recommend. But the problem is that the companies that are making these products want to be able to not have a veterinarian have to write a recommendation. How many people aren't going to the veterinarian to write it, right? And so how do you allow them to be in adult use, where when they go pick up their own medication for their multiple sclerosis or their epilepsy or whatever it may be, they find a dog product and they want to use it in their old dog with arthritis? And maybe a veterinarian can recommend one that's sitting in an adult use dispensary. But I think if we don't cap it, I'm worried what's going to happen, because a company may decide to put in 100, 10 milligram per serving all the way to the max to put their price tag a little higher because they think they have a better product. And I'm worried it's going to be, a really scary situation for some of our patients. And so I'm wondering if we can cap it, would it at least put some safeguards? And then we now have the ability to at least have the discussion with the pet parent to say, guys, there is this product out there. It's 1 milligram, but there's up to 100 milligrams in this bottle. You need to be careful. But we at least have the ability to do it. So then everybody gets a little bit of a win. And maybe down the road in a year from now, we all put our heads together and figure out how do we amend Malcursa so we can actually write recommendations for our patients that have cancer or horrific pain where they're going to need to go to a medical dispensary for something higher. I don't know if it's going to be a baby step type situation. And then at that time, do we write amend it so we can get research for pets, right? Like, I'm kind of on the same page as Christina, which is like, do we ask for the things that we think we can get without ruining the bill, which is what happened with 627. If you guys all remember, all those amendments just weighed down the bill so much that it just died. And I think we don't want to go another year where vets can't recommend and our patients are just our pet parents are going to the bud tender for their pets and our patients are at high risk.
Can I ask another?
I guess I'm still a little bit confused. If, say, for example, the recommendations for use for a pet is anything below 50 milligrams or whatever is safe, but if you want something more than 50 milligrams, then you're going to have to go to a medical dispensary where you could possibly get something that's 50 milligrams per serving or 70 or 80 milligrams per serving. Or you could still go to the recreational one and just get something that's 10 milligrams per serving and just give eight chews or 9 chews. You would still be able to give a lethal dose from products you buy at a recreational facility.
But it's only 1 milligram per serving is what we want to reduce it to. I'm worried about that 10 milligrams for exactly what you're saying. If it were 1 milligram per serving, it is exceedingly unlikely that we're going to hurt an animal. If it's 10 milligrams per serving, Mark, I completely agree. There's a chance that we're all going to be seeing increase in cases at our ER.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. I get it now.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions, please? Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Hazal. Thanks for coming and sharing with us. Why is it that the recreational adult use facilities, why is that even in this bill? Is it because they feel like people shouldn't have to go to the vet to get it, or why is that important to keep that in this bill for the people who are behind it?
I think that some of the people that are behind it own cannabis products for pets, right? And so it behooves them that owners are able to get their product fairly easily and not being able to have to go to the vet to get the recommendation. And it's funny, if Gary were here, Richter, he might say, look, he completely disagrees with that. You're hearing me, and I'm kind of on both sides, where we all know that there are some people that can't afford to go to the vet. It's now, as we all are practicing, it's like 3 to 4 weeks just to get into a vet hospital. If it's an older dog that has severe arthritis, is it wrong for them to go to a recreational dispensary and pick up something that's 1 milligram per serving? And if they need guidance, they go to their vet and say, can you help me out? And so I think there is a place for access. I think if we just put safeguards on that access, then again, the companies get some benefit. We as veterinarians get a win by being able to recommend and support our pet parents. If we had our cake and ate it too, Christina, I think that there is something to be said about us having complete control as veterinarians and saying, look, if you want something that has, we know safety for CBD, right? There's so many now publications on safety, but there's 1 to 2, right? 2, I would say, THC publications right now. So we have less information on THC. Granted, there is no LD50 for THC, everybody. There was a study done in the 1980s that looked at 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of THC for dogs, and none of the dogs died directly from THC. So we have information, right? It's not totally new, but it'd be awesome to be able to have more in vivo research, right, in dogs, to be able to make us all much more comfortable. And from my experience, again, God, it's been so long that I've been doing this in oncology. 1 milligram per serving is what I came up with, to be honest, to safeguard our patients. But I can keep talking. Christina, did that kind of answer your question as to why I think it was included in there?
Yeah, it does. And I see there's other people that want to speak on that too. So, but that definitely is helpful. And thank you again.
Yeah, you guys, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help you with this stuff. And I'll send Mark Nunez, I'll send you our letter that we sent to the BNP, and we were actually opposed, if not amended, just to make sure the number one thing is amended, is that 10 milligrams to 1 milligram is the one thing we have to have, because to keep our patients safe. All the other things we'd love to see, but that has to be our number one thing that we want to see. But I'll send you that letter so you guys have access to it, and feel free to reach out to us or the Veterinary Cannabis Society.
Your position was opposed if not amended?
Unless amended.
Okay.
And with that one factor being the one thing. And I actually mentioned that to Tim Hsu recently, who's had, really cares about a lot of this and has played a big role. And I just mentioned our VCS stance is really because of that 10 milligram part and our concern for pet safety. All the other things, amending Malcursa to get veterinarians to write recommendations, the research, all of those things I think can happen down the road. But that reduction per serving, I think, does apply those safeguards that are much needed.
Okay, Kathy, and then we'll go back to public. Kathy?
Sorry, couldn't find my thing. Thank you, Dr. Hazaz. Is very helpful to have you on here. I had a question, and you've addressed it a little bit, but when you went to the committee staff and Assembly Member Kalra with these potential amendments, which I think are very well stated and very appropriate, what was the reaction? What is your sense of whether they're going to make these amendments, some or all of them, during the process or not? What was their response?
So that's a great question. It was through someone that I sent the rationale behind it, as well as the actual language to amend the BNP code so they could make that change. And what I got back from that intermediate person is they were open to it, and even so that they would be willing to have a meeting to discuss it further. So that's really made me very happy. And I honestly didn't get into any of the other stuff because to me that was the most important thing. And also I agree without weighing down the bill so we don't create so much of a confusion where people are like, I don't know, let's just let the bill die, because we all agree with the whole recommend part. So they were open to that part. I actually just spoke with Tim Shu just the other day, yesterday, day before, so the days get all confused. But he was also, we talked a little bit about it. He was open enough where he asked me to send him the language as well, and he was going to speak with Ash Kalra's office as well. So I think there's hope. I do. I'm hopeful there is hope. Yeah.
Okay, moderator.
Okay, our next request for comment comes from Paul and Susan Hansberry Tibbin. Your line is open.
Hi, this is Paul. Good to see you all again. It's been a crazy, crazy time. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. The weighing down of the bill of 627, as you know, we're very familiar with that since we wrote it and Senator Galgiani authored it. The weighing down with the amendments came from Tim Shu and Ash Kalra. It passed the Senate unanimously, 33-0, and it wasn't until the Business and Professions Code for the Assembly insisted on those amendments that would send it into adult use retail outlets, and all the amendments that they put in and are pushing back on that was what created all the confusion. That coupled with the being put in suspense and then just having the moderator for the Appropriations Committee, the chairperson for the Appropriations Committee, just say, "Oh, pot for animals? No," and that's where the bill died, because she wasn't familiar with all the intricacies of it. That being said, the bill has already passed the Assembly Business and Professions Committee. It's moving on to Appropriations. And I'd like to read you the letter that I sent to the Appropriations Committee. It says, "Hello, AB 384 allows veterinarians to recommend cannabis products to their clients for use on their animal. It legitimizes existing veterinary cannabis products and allows for new cannabis products intended for animals. That sounds great. Who wouldn't want that? We all enthusiastically support that. It's worth noting that this bill was written and sponsored by Mr. Tim Shu. Mr. Shu was a former veterinarian and owner of a successful line of cannabis products called Vet CBD. While we have no problem with the quality of Mr. Shu's products, regardless of the questionable legality, we feel that this legislation is extremely self-serving. So before bad things develop that might be explained away later as unintended consequences, we are bound by conscience to point out what AB 384 does not do. The BCC issues licenses for cannabis dispensaries as both adult use and medical use unless the local jurisdiction does not allow for adult use. Many jurisdictions prohibit adult use and only allow medical cannabis retail outlets / dispensaries. For example, Napa County allows medical-only retail outlets and prohibits recreational cannabis retail. Consequently, there are more medical dispensaries than there are recreational cannabis retail outlets in California. While AB 384 brags about giving the veterinarian the right to recommend medical cannabis, this is not entirely true. As written today, the bill would only modify the Veterinary Practices Act to forbid the Veterinary Medical Board to discipline a veterinarian for recommending medicinal cannabis to a client. It does not modify the definition of doctor's recommendation to include veterinarians. Therefore, a veterinarian's recommendation would be worthless in Napa County or to purchase any medical cannabis product in California. Modifying the definition as we propose would include animals as patients under Malcursa, and rightfully so. Because let's face it, there's no such thing as recreational use of cannabis on an animal. While the government warning label says keep away from children and animals, because they're defenseless. However, with the doctor's recommendation, cannabis may be an appropriate therapy. By including animals as patient, it entitles researchers within the UC system to apply for a portion of the funds already allocated by Prop 64 for research. UC Davis has a fully licensed and DEA-approved facility for research on animals. They've been struggling for funding, even for basic preclinical trials, for years. The tax revenues that these new veterinary medical cannabis products would generate would alleviate any fear of a deficit to ongoing research. No new funding would be required. The Veterinary Medical Board has proposed specific language to be included in the veterinary medical cannabis legislation. AB 384, as written, opens the floodgates for a brand new market for the cannabis industry and also leaves the door open for unscrupulous operators and their greed. We propose veterinary medical cannabis products to be sold in medical cannabis retail outlets only, and only with a veterinarian's recommendation. As we have stated earlier, this is not about access. It's about safety and protection. Without a veterinary medical guidance, without medical veterinary cannabis available in medical dispensaries only, the pet parent will select products whose advertising screams the loudest. Let's not replace the caduceus with a dollar sign. As AB 384 suggests, that the regulators would have something to say about safety precautions, and the regulators would have something to say about their safety precautions. The regulators adhere to the letter of the legislation. They do not embellish or interpret for fear of litigation. While AB 384 is a step in the right direction, our hope is that in amending the bill, it will strengthen the bill to get it right the first time, because you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Sincerely, Paul Hansberry and Susan Tibbin, lovingly and legally. I think it's important that I see that the CVMA has sponsored this bill. I don't know if they've taken all the things that we just mentioned into consideration, because of the way that the bill has been lobbied to supporters, people to support, and I've spoken to them. It's all bright sunshine. Oh, you get to recommend. Oh, you get to recommend. Well, you don't really get to recommend. And to the research, they're not considered patients, so they're not available for the research funding. These are really important parts, and we strongly believe that this should be medical only and with a veterinarian's recommendation.
I don't think CVMA is sponsoring this bill. I think they support it. I don't know if they're.
I beg your pardon. That's right. They supported it, at least in when it was going into Business and Professions Committee.
Okay. Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Our next comment comes from Pamela Lopez. Pamela, your line is open.
Hi, thanks so much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of this bill. And let me just back up as the representative of the organization that sponsors the bill, which is petscannabis.org, and see if I can begin with a simple explanation of what we hope to achieve with this bill, and also provide, I think, a more accurate characterization of, who we are as a coalition. So I appreciate the board members who took a look at the analysis and, noted that there are a few cannabis industry groups that are supporting the bill. What I didn't hear, and I think the more important piece of the coalition that we've built, is that the bill is supported by many national animal rights and animal welfare organizations that are all, 501c3s and engaged in the legislative space because they want nothing more than the very best for all animals. I will, when they go low, we go high. I will not go into the morass of making accusations about who has profit incentives and so forth. But I appreciate Dr. Hizah's analysis that, Dr. Shu, in putting together this coalition, is motivated by public policy and the right reasons to want to be able to do this for pets. The problem that we are trying to solve is that cannabis is readily available in dispensaries throughout the state. Pet parents are aware of this, and they are already purchasing and dosing their animals. There are lots of pet parents who want to have conversations with their veterinarians and have those veterinarians make clear and precise recommendations, as Dr. Hazza illustrated. And I'll just give you an example from my own life, right? My dog is a CBD patient. Please tell me the right dose, what you think this is good for, what you think it will help with, how will this interact with my dog's other medicines, et cetera, et cetera. And veterinarians are not allowed to have those conversations right now for fear of legal repercussions. So first, we absolutely want veterinarians to be as involved in animal medicine and animal cannabis therapy as possible. And this bill achieves that first purpose and that first goal. The second item that we're trying to get our heads around is that some pet parents, in the same way that some pet parents, unfortunately, and I know you're all familiar with this in the practice of veterinary medicine, don't go to the vet and they try to dose their pets with whatever they can find, right? Be it human consumption cannabis, or be it aspirin, or whatever else they can try to get their hands on when their pet is ill. And that's particularly dangerous right now for cannabis because it is not legal for any animal cannabis, any products that are intended for animal consumption, to be on the market with clear labeling or clear instructions. So the way that the Bureau of Cannabis Control and the California Department of Food and Agriculture, which are the California Department of Public Health, which are the two regulatory bodies that actually go out into the field and regulate cannabis, the thing that they have settled on, because it is not clear whether or not animal products intended for animal consumption are included in Malcursa currently, is that there can be products on the market that, with a wink and a nod, we all sort of understand are going to be intended for animal consumption, but they cannot be labeled. That you can't have any instructions or directions on those products with regard to how to dose your pet. It just has to be something that you're sort of aware of. I know my dog likes this tincture, and so I have to track it down on the market and figure out where to buy it. And then I have to go online and figure out on my own exactly how many drops of this tincture to put in my food, and so my dog's food, and so on and so forth. And so you can imagine that creates a lot of danger, and it creates a lot of uncertainty for pet parents who are well-meaning and are trying to do the right thing by their animals. So the second thing that this bill would do is very clearly, under Malcursa, apply the exact same standards. So we're not opening up Malcursa. We're not trying to change the canon of cannabis law in the state, which, quite frankly, we cannot get done this year. We are simply adding pet cannabis to Malcursa under all of the exact same testing and licensing and really high quality standards, so that pet parents, most of whom are well-meaning, by the way, I think it's a logical fallacy that there are thousands and thousands of us out there who are about to kill our dogs by giving them, 30 milligrams of THC or something. But so that those of us who are actually in real time relying on cannabis as a medicine for an elderly pet or something like that, can talk to our veterinarian and get a clear recommendation, because that is what we want, and B, can purchase products on the market that are clearly labeled, that have a clear set of instructions, so that we do know what we're doing, and so that it further reduces the likelihood that we make our animals sick or anything like that. And the reason that we have put together this enormous coalition of animal rights and animal welfare groups throughout the state of California and also the nation who support this bill is because their perspective on animal policy is indicative of our coalition's perspective, which is do the greatest good for the greatest number possible, and do not allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good. This is, quite frankly, this is the bill that we can get this year. We cannot open Malcursa. That is legislatively impossible. We would not get through those politics at this point. If we were to make the broad, sweeping range of policy recommendations that were, sprinkled in between the good sir's character assassinations of Dr. Shu in his letter, we would quite frankly lose the bill. And so the question before the medical board today is, do we want to allow veterinarians to recommend and talk to their patients about cannabis, A, and B, for for products that are on the market that are intended for pet use? Do we want them to be, ambiguous and kind of sneaky and no one's clear exactly what they're buying because the state has adopted this strange stance where these products are legal, but only if they don't include any instructions or labeling or anything like that? Or do we want pet parents to have access to products that are clearly labeled so that they don't do things like unintentionally, dose their dog with 20 milligrams of THC or something like that? With regard to the amendments offered by Dr. Hazza, she did have a conversation yesterday, I believe, with Dr. Shu, and we have been as collaborative as we possibly can be in terms of being open to recommendations that would not cause us to lose the entire bill. And what we can offer, having 24 hours to turn this around, is that we are willing to recommend, of course, this is Assemblymember Kalra's bill, but we are willing to recommend that Assemblymember Kalra, our coalition, would recommend that Assemblymember Kalra amend the bill to limit products that are intended for animal consumption to 5 milligrams per dose. We think it brings the number down. Yeah, 5 milligrams of THC sounds crazy if you have a small Chihuahua, but we would note that, we're also talking about 120-pound, German Shepherds and horses in this bill. So there is reason to leave that dose a little bit higher, but we would be willing to accept an amendment to limit to 5 THC per dose for animal products. And then with regard to the California Veterinary Medical Association, I can state quite clearly that they are very much in support of the bill. And I will just add that, our coalition trusts their leadership. The California Veterinary Medical Association has been involved in developing the language of this bill since its inception. They have been working closely with our coalition and with Assemblymember Kalra since we started working on the bill in November. And so we are very tuned in to making sure that medical professionals are guiding the development of this language. And, far be it for me to speak on behalf of what another organization's intentions are, but I will just say very briefly that if we were to accept most of the amendments that are proposed in Dr. Richter's letter, the California Veterinary Medical Association would immediately oppose the legislation, and we would lose the bill. So I think the real question before the Veterinary Medical Board is, do we want legislation that allows veterinarians to make recommendations to pet parents? And do we want clear instructions on products that are available? And we're willing to limit it to the 5 milligrams and live to fight another day, and happy to work with Dr. Hazza next year on legislation that might add veterinarians to the medical professionals who are allowed to make recommendations for products under the M license standards. But remember, we would have to open up existing cannabis law in order to do that, and it would be giant and ambitious and very challenging. So that is not something that we can get done in this bill this year, but we are willing to limit it to 5 milligrams and happy to work on that issue next year. We think that's a great idea, and let's get this piece done first. Thank you.
Pamela, could you spell the group that you're with? You said it's the Pets.
Petscannabis.org.
So PETS?
Mm-hmm. Cannabis.org. And this is a coalition of, it does include vet CBD and some cannabis industry partners, but it also includes a large number of very prominent and well-respected animal rights and animal welfare organizations like Best Friends. Their mission is to make sure that every abandoned pet in the U.S. is adopted out to a forever home. they consider access to all tools, including therapeutic cannabis, to be important to any rescue organization. The Pirelli Foundation, which is a national organization to protect horses and so forth.
And Pets Cannabis is one word.org is your website.
Petscannabis.org. Mm-hmm.
What? Okay. And you're the sponsor of this bill? Is your coalition is?
We are the Assemblymember Kalra is the official sponsor. We are the primary supporters of the bill. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a question?
Ask a question too. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Pamela, for the background. It's really also very helpful. And I apologize if this has been stated. Does this bill cover the safety concerns with the quality control and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So under this bill, all of the safety standards for cannabis that apply to human consumption products would apply to animal products. So as you may know, Malcursa actually sets like testing for additives, anything like that, standards for cannabis that are more stringent than the standards for any food that you purchase in the state or any like aspirin that you buy at the grocery store. I mean, the standards in terms of making sure that human consumption products are safe are the highest for any product in the state. And those standards would be applied to all products intended for animal consumption under this bill. And that's another piece of why the bill is good. You know, we want that, and we don't want people we agree we don't want individuals trying to kind of piece it together and figure it out on their own without the help of a veterinarian and without clear labels and testing standards imposed by the state. We want all of those things, and realistically this is the very best that we can get this year. And there are tens of thousands of animals and pet parents in real time in the state right now who do not even have the level of protection and veterinarian support that this bill would accomplish this year.
I have a question. This is Tara Welch, Board Counsel. Ms. Long, you indicated you'd be willing to accept an amendment to limit dosage to 5 milligrams per dose. I think the discussion that we heard from Dr. Hazza was limiting to 1 milligram per dosage and then requiring dosages greater than that to be obtained from a medicinal facility or retailer. But you're saying that you can't open up a Cursa to do medicinal sales. So how would this amendment work? Would it just be you could only sell in 5 milligram dosages at a recreational facility, and then there would be no requirement to go to a medicinal retailer to get a higher amount?
That's correct. And by being so with the amendment, the bill would limit doses to 5 milligrams, and then there would be no way to purchase more than 5 milligrams currently. There's currently no way to purchase any product that's labeled with any dose amount. So we would cap it at 5 milligrams. By remaining silent on the M license issue, we would fall back on existing Malcursa law, which requires, so let me state it this way. You can't purchase something that has more than a 10 milligram dose for a human in an adult use dispensary. Because you cannot do that, you automatically revert to existing M license law and have to purchase, if you're like a medical patient and you're purchasing, a cancer patient, 50 milligram THC doses. Because you can't buy more than 10 milligrams of THC in a regular dispensary, you must fall back on medical law. So if this bill were to have the simple, basic amendment that animal products can include up to 5 milligrams per dose, we would still essentially leave that that more than 5 milligrams per dose in the gray area where it exists right now, which is slightly unfortunate, but at least, you know, the number of animals that are affected would be very, very minimal. We're talking like end of life palliative care cancer patients, you know, not my dog with arthritis who takes a 1 milligram daily dose. And then we would have an opportunity to come back and amend Malcursa, existing state law with regard to medical cannabis law, to add veterinarians to the group of medical professionals who are allowed to write those license prescriptions. But that change is big. It would be big. It would be complex. It would involve opening existing cannabis law as it affects medical patients. There are other interest groups who would likely try to use that opening up of the existing law with a particular bill to insert their own amendments and so forth, which is why at this late state in 2021, we're suggesting let's at least take care of 95% of animal patients who are in that 5 milligrams of THC or below range, and allow veterinarians to make recommendations and allow those purchases to be made of clearly labeled products at existing dispensaries. And then let's go back and change medical cannabis law to add veterinarians next year.
Okay, Kathy?
I just wanted to clarify, Ms. Lopez, you're a lobbyist for
Yes.
the organization. I kind of looked for it. I couldn't find it, petscannabis.org online. So maybe spelling it wrong. I don't know. But you're lobbying. Okay, so you're a lobbyist for that organization, and Vet CBD is one of the clients or one of the partners of it or something.
Yes. Yes, that's right. So last year, Vet CBD was involved in issues related to animal cannabis. And we realized last year that our effort would not be successful unless we put together a broad national coalition. So we spent the fall of last year coalition building, and have put together this national coalition that is as inclusive as possible. With all due respect, lovingly and legally is the only opposition to the bill, and every other animal rights and animal welfare organization that we've spoken with and that we've reached out to has joined the coalition. So
Thank you. That's all I had.
Any other public comment?
Let's see. Paul, who spoke earlier, I guess Susan would also like to make a comment. Susan, your line is open.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's really good to see you all again. And thank you to the previous speaker. I understand the previous speaker works with Mr. Shu and Vet CBD, and it's a good product. However, we think it's important to oppose AB 384 unless it's amended, and to do that now. And here's why. Paul and I have been involved in a number of different legislative projects in Sacramento for the past decade. Given the drought that was just, the emergency drought that was just announced by the governor yesterday, given the fires that are sure to come, and certainly the pandemic, which we hope will be winding down, the picture legislatively is that it is very, very doubtful that we're going to be able to revisit this sort of issue. And although we appreciate Assemblyman Coller's keeping this on the front burner, because animals have become even more important dealing with what we're all dealing with. The main problem with AB 384 is it simply removes censure of veterinarians for discussing cannabis-based medicine. And while discussion is very, very valuable, AB 384 does nothing to rectify the current situation. My colleague in Napa County cannot use, she would not be able to use her veterinarian's recommendation in her medical dispensary. Unless we amend MACRSA, we're looking at being able to discuss without censure, but that's it. AB 384 actually is incentivizing the present dangerous situation. Paul pretty much covered the legalese. So as a pet parent, our kitties have gotten thyroid disease. Kitties tend to get hyperthyroidism. Dogs, hypothyroid disease. Now, both of these thyroid conditions exhibit a panoply of symptoms that can easily be mistaken for a number of other conditions. Kitty is too hyperactive, maybe a cannabis medicine that mellows her out a little. My doggy with hypothyroidism, kind of sluggish, not peppy the way he used to be, maybe a cannabis medicine that peps him out a little bit. This is what's happening now. Pet parents are getting recommendations, are getting medical advice from the staff at recreational dispensaries. It's just appalling. We've seen huge numbers of serious situations happening now with pets that are being wrongly medicated because there's no way a staff at a recreational dispensary can have the background and the expertise that a veterinarian has. Our feeling is that you cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube. Unless we get this right now, I don't think we're going to be able to fix this for the foreseeable future. And I think in terms of the health and safety of animals and protecting the general public, we need to do our very best. And so we would recommend opposing unless amended, because if you put it the other way, if you put approve unless amended, it is counted as an approval. And with all due respect to the coalition that VetCBD built, a good third of those coalition people, of those supporters, are from out of state. And, you know, I appreciate that they care about California and perhaps looking to the future. But right now, we're working in California and we tend to be the leaders in a number of areas. And we hope that we can be the leader here and do what's really right, as opposed to simply incentivizing cannabis dog food, cannabis cures, which is what's going to happen because Paul and I have seen the advertising ever since 64 passed. We are very familiar with both medical and recreational dispensaries, and not to disparage either, but one is medical and the other just isn't. There is no recreational use for cannabis for animals. And it was very, very distressing, frankly, to see pre-rolls advertised briefly on VetCBD's site. It was very distressing. It's since been removed. I'm sure it was just an accident, but it certainly calls into question what's going on here. Thank you very, very much. Yes, Dr. Nunez.
Did you say pre-rolls?
Yes, pre-rolls are a joint, like, you know, we've all seen, and those were advertised very briefly with a man bending down, obviously smoking a joint, and looked to be kind of blowing that smoke in the muzzle or the face of his doggy. And again, it was probably just a mistake, or maybe it was for some other products the company was going to be doing, but it really calls into question the, you know, or what's going on here. So thank you very, very much. Yes.
Ashley, I'm sorry, it's for my board. Sorry, Susan. Can the doctors on the board let me know, are you guys seeing a lot of overdosing? Because when I was in Los Angeles, because I'm now in Santa Barbara, but we were seeing at North Figueroa Animal Hospital a lot of pets coming in who had been overdosed by their owners. So I'm just curious if that was common at other clinics or if that was just kind of something that we saw at our clinic.
I don't see much overdosing of pet products, it's usually the dog got into the owner's stash is usually where toxicity happens, at least for me. And can I say I feel real old that I didn't know that a roll was a joint? I feel old.
Yeah, we saw quite a few dogs that ate the chocolate bar or the products that were purchased, and that had certainly gone up significantly since the recreational bill passed. But I hadn't seen people dosing their animals incorrectly per se.
Okay.
Can we hear from CVMA's support on this bill, please?
This is the moderator. We have Grant Miller. Grant, your line is open.
Good afternoon, board members. Thank you very much for your detailed discussion on this topic. The CVMA does have a support position on AB 384 in its current form. However, we do not have a position on the latest discussion topics that have been brought up by Dr. Hazza, Pamela Lopez, and the other commenters on the bill. We have been approached by them to discuss the concept of creating a cap on a licensed, which is the adult dispensary licensed products. We've been approached by them also on a few other aspects of the bill, and we are considering those now. But the CVMA has, definitely had a dynamic involvement in this bill, but we are standing on our own on this bill. We work very closely with the author's office, but we're not part of any coalition. We do like to engage all stakeholders and keep open dialogues with everyone. But this bill, we feel, has a long way to go. Overall, the impetus for our support initially had to do with what all the parties have said, and what I think you as the board understand as well, which is we need the ability to have organic, honest, and complete conversations with our clients about cannabis. Stopping the conversation short at recommendation is just not something that really serves consumers well, and we believe that it leads to consumers seeking information from sources that we feel could put pets in danger. And so for that reason, we would like to see a bill go forward that allows recommendation, but we do have concerns about the bill being amended so many times that it's taking too big of a bite of an apple. That's what essentially happened with 627. And so we would like to, engage everyone, make sure that we are talking with everyone about it, but we, at this point in time, do not have a position on the latest round of proposed amendments relating to the cap and to written recommendations and a few other topics as well. Are there any questions?
I have a question, Grant.
Sure.
Maybe it's not for you though, but I'm trying to understand, we've been told a few times now today that this is going to really help to clarify the labeling. And I'm assuming they're referring to the last part of this bill that is 26130E, that says if the cannabis product is intended for the therapeutic effect or health supplementation use on or of consumption by an animal, the cannabis product shall also conform with any additional relevant standards established by the department through regulations. To me, that seems kind of vague. Is that just me, or is there something that I don't know about that makes it very clear to everyone? And how do you guys at CVMA feel about that?
So on our end, we certainly see that there are issues with the bill that we also have questions on, that we have concerns on, but we recognize that this is a very good author. It's a very strong author. Ash Kalra authored 2215, which allowed us to discuss cannabis. We also know that the provision of the VMB guidelines, which have actually largely been written already by the MDC in anticipation of this bill, we recognize that those will provide a lot of leeway and guidance as well. So in those areas, Dr. Nolan, that you're confused, we also have questions about those areas, but we still feel like, we have a really good opportunity here to move this bill forward. And so that's our current stance.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other public comments?
It looks like the only other request we have right now is Miss Pamela Lopez is requesting to make another comment. Would you like me to allow second round comments?
Yes.
Okay. Pamela, your line is open.
Thank you so much. I apologize for losing the call. I had a message come in from my son's preschool. I'll just be very brief since I was cut off. Thank you for the clarification that CVMA is not a part of the Pet Cannabis Coalition. Our coalition has worked very closely with CVMA, however, and included them in the discussion since this bill began. And I think where my call was lost was that our feeling is that if they are advising on the bill, that the interests of veterinarians in terms of having medical expertise is very well represented with Assemblymember Kalra leading this bill and his close work with CVMA. I would also just point out that the characterization of Dr. Shu and the coalition that is supporting this bill is, it's inaccurate, it's inappropriate, and it really does not bear on our ability to be a part of this conversation with good intention and good policy minds. We're very proud of the coalition that we've put together. It is a much larger coalition as a national coalition, including state actors than with all due respect, than Lovingly and Legally, who is really a few people. I'm not going to get into the mud of talking about profit incentives that have to do with offering for-profit training for veterinarians or anything like that some of our opponents to the bill sell. But we're all here in good faith trying to put together the best policy solutions that we can realistically get out of the legislature, and that's why we've built the coalition petcannabis.org as it exists, and that's why we've been so inclusive, and that's why we're open to working with everybody. And just in closing, with all due respect, other than perhaps that amendment to capping at 5 milligrams, this is the best that we're going to get. This is the best that we are going to get for a long time. I agree with the bill's opponents. If we start, if we pass this bill, this will probably be an important change that stands for some time. If we start accepting tons of amendments as they are being offered by the opponents, and we've worked with them in previous years on animal cannabis legislation, and it's like the bill gets amended and then it's not good enough, and then it gets amended again, and then it's not good enough, and then it gets amended again, and then it's not good enough, and then the bill dies. And so really, again, the question before the Veterinary Medical Board today is, do we want clear labeling on products so that pet parents are not doing things like guessing, with their own home dose or their stash or something like that? And do we want pet parents to be able to have really clear conversations with veterinarians without fear of legal repercussion? And again, I would just stress that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of pet parents caught in a lurch who cannot talk to their veterinarians and who cannot find products that are clearly labeled with clear dosing instructions right now. And are we going to allow that major policy problem to continue for several years while we keep, agonizing about getting a bill written with even more amendments that's even more ambitious and even more perfect? Or are we going to address this problem this year with the fantastic author that we have who understands cannabis issues really well? Thank you all for your time today and your close attention to this issue. We really do appreciate it, and our coalition really is well-meaning, and we want to solve this problem and provide the very best for pets.
And Ms. Lopez, I apologize if you feel that you were cut off. That definitely was not our intention. There wasn't any directions to cut you off. As a board, we're very proud to have the longest meetings of all of DCA. Because we definitely do like to hear from everyone on all the issues, and we don't make decisions lightly. So thank you very much for being
I have
with
a
us.
question for Pamela. I've looked up Pamela. I looked up petscannabis.org. It's not popping up. Can you tell me what animal groups are part of the coalition besides Best Friends?
Yes, I'm
Alana, it's
sorry.
pet. I'm sorry, it's pet cannabis. There's no S in it. I found it online. So
There's no
You did
S.
find, okay. Is it listed there?
It should be.
Is it listed on there, Pamela?
Yes, it should be. So off the top of my head, I do not have the full Excel spreadsheet in front of me, but the Pirelli Foundation is a member of our coalition. The UC Davis Equine Group is a member of our coalition. Rocket Dog Rescue in California is a member of our coalition. The National Animal Supplement Council is a member of our coalition. I can get the full list for you, Commissioner Yanez, and I will also direct you to the list of support for the bill in the most recent committee analysis, which includes not all, but several of the animal welfare organizations that have signed on in support. And then I will also just note that as of the publication of the most recent committee analysis via petcannabis.org, we had I think 384 individual pet parents throughout the state of California who signed on to a letter saying, yes, this is a problem for me right now. I cannot find products that are properly labeled. And so I don't know what I'm doing here when I'm trying to find this medicine for my pet, because without this bill, the state will not allow clear labeling. I believe as of today, we have more than 450 individual signatories throughout the state of California who have signed our coalition letter. And I will submit that stack of letters from those 450 individuals, as well as the letters from all of our coalition partners to the VMB so that you can have those for your records.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Can I ask something real quick, Mark?
Yeah, I also would like to, let's not try to go back and forth with response and point and counterpoint. Board meetings aren't set up to really hash out issues, but go ahead, Dr.
Well,
Nolan.
hopefully you can hear me. I was going to try to get something in before they started the vibrator thing outside. But, and this isn't necessarily for Pamela, but perhaps for Tara or someone else. Where do I go to do a little more research to actually discern where in this bill it does start to require clear and concise labeling on animal products? It doesn't seem very clear to me, and there's no real reference to where to go except for the section 426130E. I think it's 7E. So is there any way that I can get directed to more legislation or more statutes that help me with that?
So you're correct. This is Tara. The bill itself only provides for labeling to be done by CDPH under subdivision E of 26130. How they're going to promulgate those regulations, I don't know, and this might actually be a better question for CDPH. I mean, I'd like to know how they are going to define therapeutic effect or health supplementation for use on or for consumption by an animal of a cannabis product. I don't know how they're going to do that, seeing as how we have been unable to add animal cannabis use to research done in California. So I don't know. That may be a Department of Public Health question as to how they're actually going to be able to flesh that out. But as far as this bill goes, you found it, it's that subdivision E.
So I would say that it does make it difficult as a board to make a decision during a meeting when we get so much information from different groups about an issue. So we could spend all afternoon with this. And again, I would remind the board that unless Kathy Bowler disagrees, there's not a sense of urgency to take a position right now on this.
Yeah.
Dr.
I agree.
I just want to, can I just make one comment? I wanted to listen to everybody. And then for me, the biggest, the things that I think we should be thinking about, and I don't know whether we need to take a position or not, but just the things that I'm thinking about are the consumer and consumer protection. And currently they are not protected in this arena at all. It's just willy-nilly, and we aren't part of the conversation. And I think that this has gone on too long. My biggest concern when people are asking me about it is that they're getting products that are labeled for pets in weird ways, or products that are they're getting for humans. They don't know how to dose it, but the products that are not human labeled have these quality control issues. And honestly, the two more important things to me than labeling is the communication with a veterinarian and being able to talk to a veterinarian and have us be allowed to tell somebody how to dose an animal, or at least if we feel comfortable doing that. And this quality control of the product, and if that's in there, I think that, continuing to not, move things forward because they're not perfect is doing more harm than good. I think the ideal is correct, but I feel like we really at some point should try and do something. But that's just my thoughts on it.
Okay, does anyone have a desire to take a position right now?
Kathy, it's Kathy. Rather than, I know our position in the past was oppose unless amended, maybe the position right now should be just to watch this while it's moving through. And
agree.
possibly there will be other amendments, Dr. Hazaz, milligram limits, caps, things like that. And then we'll have another opportunity.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. That's my opinion as well.
And just to clarify that on 627, the last one was support if amended.
Oh, sorry.
But the
Do we have to take a vote if we take a watch position, or just if we take?
No, we're gonna continue to watch it internally and bring it back to the board. So this isn't going anywhere.
Okay, so then I think we can move on. And it's been an hour and a half, so why don't we take a 15-minute break to facilitate ourselves and be back in 15. Jamie, there you are. Okay, so we've done E and F, controlled substances, pet insurance, expunging convictions, veterans, data collection. I think AB 1282, blood banks, is, some people may have an interest in that. I think if Jessica wants to fill us in, I think the latest version of this bill is to move these operations out of veterinary hospitals altogether. And if that's the case, then they may no longer be under our jurisdiction, or do I have that wrong?
No, the latest amendment from April 15th was to require the board to hire a consultant to develop guidelines for the community blood banks to operate. But just a quick background for this bill. As you all know, the prior legislative sessions, there's been 2 competing bills with Assemblymember Bloom and Senator Wilk. Senator Wilk's bill went through and was later vetoed by the governor because there wasn't a phase out period for the closed colonies. And so this is essentially a marriage of the 2 bills. The 2 authors came together and they combined a lot of the things that the prior pieces of legislation did. So there is, in the beginning, there's going to be 2 operations that are going to be able to be allowed to exist: the community blood banks and the closed colonies. The board would be the ones regulating the community blood banks, and CDFA would stay with the closed colonies. There would be a trigger after both the community blood banks and the closed colonies report to CDFA. CDFA is also going to collect retroactive data from the closed blood banks regarding canine blood, and they're from the years 2018, 2019, 2020. And so when the community blood banks, I believe if they meet the average number of canine blood sold from 18, 19, 19, 20, and 2020, or 4 consecutive quarters, then that would be a trigger to where CDFA would then have to put notice on their website that in 12 months they would stop their licensing of closed colonies. So at that time, they would all have to transition to a community blood bank facility. So the concern for the board has always been supply, and so that supply, with you have closed colonies and community blood banks, essentially in theory that would increase the supply. I think the board had also had a lot of concerns about the safety of the blood and the testing of the blood, and so those concerns may still be happening. But the other things to keep in mind is the canine blood, sold, it is defined to include whole blood, packed red blood cells, and fresh frozen plasma. So it's not just whole blood, it's related to the blood products as well. But there's just some I think some confusion in some of how the language is from a implementation standpoint, how it's written. There's some language that talks about enforcement when it talks about what specific trigger, not a trigger, what's the word I'm looking for? Abiding by the guidelines to the extent possible makes it difficult to enforce, because licensees can then say, well, it wasn't possible to abide by these standards. And so I think that needs to be looked at. But I do think in whole, it covers some of the board's concerns when it relates to the supply. The other concern, though, to keep in mind is that just the cost associated with it. It's hard for us as staff to provide accurate fiscals when we're not quite sure what this world is going to look like. We've heard a few versions. We've heard where veterinarians are going to be doing this in their own clinics. We've heard from other veterinarians that they say that they're not able to do this. They're not interested in doing this. We've heard that there's going to be independent blood bank facilities they're just going to be their standalone facilities that are going to be doing that. So the board, that would be an increase in cost because there's going to be more facilities to inspect. So, and then we've also heard that the veterinarians are essentially just going to be the ones collecting the blood, and then there's going to be a third party that's going to come and pick up the blood, and then they're going to be in charge of storing and creating the blood products and all of that. And those entities would not be part of the Veterinary Medical Board's jurisdiction at all. And so all of that is just unknown. So I don't know if there's some of maybe the sponsors of how they feel this is going to be implemented and what this world's going to look like that might help with fiscals going forward. But right now, as it's written, we did estimate the bulk of the cost is going to be the upfront cost of creating this program. We are going to have to do some regulations to establish those the guidelines to establish the program itself for the applications. And so that upfront cost, we would need to get a limited term AGPA to help with all of that and the facilitation of the implementation. We think that that's going to be a big upfront cost. We also think we're going to have to do a significant amount of training for our inspectors because they don't have this expertise or experience in collecting the blood and dividing up the products and storing the blood. So there's going to be a lot of training for our inspectors. And then the bill also doesn't set an actual fee for this new registration that we have to create. And so because there's so much unknown, we would recommend doing a fee audit to see what the appropriate and reasonable fee would be to charge. But again, that's another upfront cost. It's interesting in the new amendment when it adds the authority to hire, requires the board to hire a consultant. There's language in there, and it's 4920.5 that states that the board, upon appropriation, it was essentially giving us authority to hire, and it makes it certainly easier for a BCP because budget change proposals give us that appropriation to be able to hire that consultant. But again, as I actually mentioned in NBC yesterday too, is appropriations is different than funding. Appropriations is giving us authority to spend money we already have. It's not giving us the funding to create the program. And so without funding, without having a source of revenue up front, then just understand that it's all of the licensees that fund the board that would have to be absorbing any upfront costs for implementation, how it's written. So we did provide a fiscal on it. And again, it's really the upfront costs that would occur. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board members. If they have any concerns or questions, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I think the biggest, this board definitely recognizes the need for blood products and whole blood, and also recognizes the appeal of community blood banks as opposed to closed colonies, just for the animal welfare aspect of it. What's confusing is how it's going to work and how we can regulate that. If the blood banks are going to be in the hospital, because that's where it's being stored, or not, or is the hospital just going to be the place where blood is collected, and then the storage, the processing, the quality control issues, if that's done outside of a veterinary hospital, then that's going to be more difficult for us to regulate. Board members, could you chime in on this, Kathy?
Yeah, and I'm happy to see that we have some of the proponents of the bill in the public audience waiting to testify too. So hopefully some of these answers. I think a lot of what Jessica said, I've read this and I've read the amendments. The bill does satisfy a number of things. This new bill, Assemblymember Bloom's bill, does satisfy some of the concerns we had last time. And obviously, I think we're, like you said, Mark, we do want to expand the supply. We would like to expand the community resources of the supply, and also have our vets be able to, sort of import from outside the state as well, which is part of this bill too. I think there's just some questions. I know I have a couple of questions, and that I'm hoping that maybe the sponsors can answer. I know the bill is being active, and I know that I assume the sponsors are also working with CDFA because it's kind of a joint VMB CDFA situation here. So I'm just glad to see that a few of them are on the call, that maybe they can answer some of our questions. Because again, for us, Jessica said it correctly about the fiscal impact, but it's also wanting to make sure that our board is capable to take on these added responsibilities, and can do the best for for public protection that we can, while increasing blood supply and continuing quality, cost efficiency, and also the welfare of the donor dogs. So anyway, that's just what I had to say.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yeah, one of the things I noticed in here is the language about being able to import blood products from other states, which we can't do now and has been a problem. But I don't know if that would then limit where, because I think a lot of the, or I shouldn't say a lot, but I think some of the out-of-state producers may have closed colonies. So I don't know if that, if this bill controls for that or not, but that would help us a lot in this state to be able to get products from elsewhere and not have that limitation on things. So I just wanted to mention that, because that hadn't been brought up as part of the discussion. It seems just very complicated, but whenever change is made, that seems to be the case. And I think with the proper support, we might be able to do it. I do worry about the fiscal impact, but I don't know. Is there any other means of absorbing fiscal impacts of things like this outside of our normal budget? Is there any other? There's nothing else. Okay. All right. That's all I have.
We'll probably get a lot of more information from the public. I don't see any other board members' hands raised. So if the moderator could open it up to the public, please.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment on this bill, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the ask field and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Jennifer Fearing. Jennifer, your line is open.
Hi, can you hear me? I see Kathy. I see the nodding heads. Hi, good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to connect with you all. Jennifer Fearing, I'm working with a number of organizations that are supporting the bill. It is author sponsored this time around. Mr. Bloom felt strongly about wanting to be the leader of his bill, primarily to ensure all stakeholders felt like their voices were super involved in this version. And I think it's actually served well the conversations that have already been taking place in progress and working with CVMA through the first round of amendments that you just talked about. But I am working with the San Francisco SPCA, the San Diego Humane Society, and Best Friends Animal Society. And I just took quick notes while you were talking to try to address, rather than give a statement. I'll just sort of like address some of the questions that I heard you raise. I would encourage. It sounded like, Jessica, that you have prepared a fiscal. It'd be great to share that with the author. The author has already communicated both in the hearing and in conversations with other stakeholders that as the sub-3 chair, as a budget sub-chair, that he intends to make a member's request to request funds to do the upfront implementation, hopefully in this year's budget. As you know, the state has quite a bit of additional resources this year, and one-time funds to implement priorities are something that have much more opportunity than in prior years. So this is a good year to be trying to tackle this. And so that language was about upon appropriation was worked on with the Assembly BNP committee staff to actually create a kind of a hook for, and in fact, a budget request that the chair would like to make. And he, of course, would like to make that pencil out for the needs you actually have. I think he'd be open and would similarly want to do something for CDFA if they identify similar upfront costs. And we have been in discussions with CDFA's legislative staff and are hopeful to engage all of you soon. So on the funding side, glad to know you've figured out some upfront costs, and I think you have a willing ask in the Assemblymember Bloom in trying to resolve that. we continue to hear lots of stories about massive shortages. And we had in the hearing the other day, Dr. Pulowski was one of the primary witnesses testifying in support of the bill and talked about a recent situation that was pretty heartbreaking. Again, so we'd really like to see this get done this year so that we can start to work meaningfully towards the shortages. On the imports question, the way the bill is drafted, and if you don't think it achieves this, we would love input, is that the imports would have to be consistent with whatever is lawful in California at that time. So in the short run, that would mean whatever's lawful in terms of, for the canines, closed colony blood is lawful. So would import. But if that were to change in California because the trigger had been satisfied, then closed colony canine blood from out of state would also would not be eligible. I think our understanding of the markets nationally is there's a shortage, so it's not clear that imports will do much. But I think we all know circumstances where there's been availability of blood short-term in Reno, other areas close by. It would be great for it to be legal in those circumstances. And the intent of the bill is to make that lawful. And then I guess lastly, we did try to address issues that we knew the VetMed board had concerns they had with legislation last year if we've not met the mark. I know the author is really interested, again, in trying to hear from all stakeholders and make sure that we're balancing all of the interests of the animals, pets, veterinarians, and oversight, government responsibilities, like balance all of that. We want that. He wants that input. And I guess I just lastly would say the bill is complex. The industry is complex, but the goal of the bill or the vision of the bill was in keeping with lots of things we've heard from you all and others, that the product kind of quality control side of things would remain the domain of CDFA, while the community blood bank kind of veterinary collection piece would be under CVMB. We're aware of a lot of existing protocols and other best practices that are out there, both at UC Davis and at other companies that do community blood banking, that we think a consultant kind of hired by the board to pull together those protocols and guidelines, that we're hoping it's not going to be a super complicated process to develop those best practices for use by veterinarians who have expressed, and I think will express, if nothing else drives it, the profit motive associated with this blood needs and the demand. We're hopeful there will be a number of folks who will want to start to address this shortage when it's lawful under this bill. I guess I'll just end there. We're very heartened by the conversations we've been having with CVMA, and a lot of the amendments that were taken in the last round were directly to address things they've raised over the years and more recently, and we're going to continue to encourage the author to work closely with them.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Can I ask Jennifer a question?
Jennifer still on?
If I'm still here.
Yeah, there you are. And it may be a moot point, but when I read the bill, it seems like the animals have to be owned by a person and not any other entity. Does that raise any problems for humane societies or rescue shelters if they have current practices where they're able to use blood for in-house use? Maybe that's not an issue, but I just wondered that you might know that.
That's a good question. I haven't, and that's actually a question I would love to take back to like San Francisco SPCA and San Diego Humane, both of which run, in addition to their shelters, large-scale veterinary practices, and have both expressed an interest in potentially doing community blood banking. I don't know whether they had envisioned utilizing, shelter residents, animal residents as donors or not. But Jamie, I would like to take that back to them and get input from them. I wouldn't want to be overly restrictive of something that was otherwise a good idea, but I'm not sure whether that is or not.
Well, I don't know if they're currently making use of that because there's such a shortage. I don't know if they, in a dire situation, do have to use other non-owned dogs. I don't know. So it might be worthwhile asking them.
They have, when I've asked about that in the past, they've used staff dogs. They've used own dogs, like similar that way that private practice clinics use. I have not heard them articulate utilizing shelter pets.
Mark, can I ask a couple of questions?
Yes, please.
Hi, more afternoon, Jennifer. Hi, this is just maybe being stupid, but a quick question on first on the out-of-state blood banks. Was it in addition to complying with California rules, were you guys envisioning CDFA inspecting those, or has that even been covered yet? Is that something more details yet to come that would qualify them for use for veterinarians in California?
I think that we are hopeful when CDFA engages with the author's office, that will be something they can help think through. We put it in their wheelhouse because they do that, as you know, for egg products and for eggs and other where we have put standards on particular types of products that CDFA, they have history, they currently do inspection and certification processes for products that are meant to meet California standards from out of state. So I think we need more dialogue with Dr. Jones and others at CDFA to understand how they might handle that here.
Okay, yeah, I assume FDA or because you have it as they'd be tracked and administered and enforced by CDFA. So I'm just wondering, so it sounds like those discussions are.
In part it belongs there because they have the purview in the bill under this paradigm as the products folks, and by the time it's blood coming into the state, it's a product at that point, and we're requiring product registration with CDFA. And so they are who make sense if we're going to try this. But I think the actual nuts and bolts of how they would accomplish that is ahead in the dialogue.
Yeah, it does make sense. Certainly more them than us, of course. One thing that, and this is I have another bigger question, but one thing on this is, as kind of to Christina's question, one thing about the formula, if getting outside products can be accomplished and enforced and, administered by CDFA, and it's during the 3 years that you're monitoring the quantity, and then after the 3 years, once closed captioned, I almost said, captive colonies are prohibited. If those are prohibited, then that will skew that formula slightly. I know we don't know how much out-of-state blood might or might not come in, but just a thought on that. Because if they then are not then allowed after the 3 years or whatever, after the prohibition on the closed colonies, then that quantity may be a little less. So, but anyway, that's sort of minuscule. My big question here is, I understand if the veterinarians would be tasked with drawing, and that the veterinary premises and the veterinarian license are all under, sort of the responsibility of this board. If you were, and CDFA currently is doing the 2 closed colony, if there were you envisioning, and not all, I would say not all veterinarians, some may be able to expand their footprint of a practice to include both capturing, drawing blood, possibly processing and holding and refrigerating, et cetera. But I would were you expecting that there would be third-party entities with a facility that would do the processing, the storing, the tagging, the distributing, and the quality control of the blood products drawn at a veterinarian office?
The truth is, Kathy, I think there's a lot of different ways this could play out once this market opens up, and it's speculation at this point to know how it will sort out. I mean, I think we want to keep veterinarians and in a licensed veterinarian engaged at all steps of that process, and so that's why they're in the bill with that responsibility. But we know, like with Blue Ridge, for example, which is one of the successful community blood bankers on the East Coast, she works with their company works with like a dozen or more veterinarians across the seaboard, and they do they use them as donation sites. The veterinary clinics recruit their clients, on a quarterly basis to come in. She shows up, does the blood collection, and does all the processing, and then selling from there. And I don't know, as I sit here, what the arrangement she has with those clinics, for them to buy back basically the blood from, but she's basically, right, they've kind of regionalized it where she's made the investment in the technical skills and in the product development, and they do the recruiting of donors. And so I could see that kind of arrangement. It would be interesting to think about where Davis might play a role in this going forward. We do know Dr. Pulowski is interested. He's built his new big 24-hour specialty clinic in El Dorado Hills and is thinking about expanding it. It feels like a regional model could work itself out, where a veterinary practice in various regions of the state decide to invest in that capacity and end up being a supplier of blood and blood products for other hospitals in that area. I think the bill is trying not to require one of those outcomes, right? But allow them all the potential, and as we see where the market goes, but the right restraints and the right guidelines and the right oversight to keep it, to maintain that safety and the concerns that the bill is trying to account for safety no matter what. But I guess I just can't, I don't want to guess.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I guess my follow-up question would be, in those instances where it's not happening at a veterinary practice, is it in this bill the intention that CDFA would be responsible for monitoring, inspecting, quality control of locations, or who would it fall under? What agency?
I think CDFA exclusively has the products registration. So once it's collected and it's being sold, it's CDFA's oversight. But the collection side is VMB.
Right. So collection, but distribution, production, spinning, product, that would all be so CDFA would have multiple, under your potential situation, there would be additional locations that they would be responsible for monitoring. It sounds like.
Potentially. Again, are there going to be 6 or 20 of these, that get, it's hard to know where things go. And I think we all should maintain, I certainly would maintain humility about not being able to predict the future, and that this may need an ongoing tweaking as things develop in order to, it would be a good problem to have an overabundance of folks interested in trying to help address this blood shortage. But if we didn't anticipate correctly how some of that goes, and there's issues that arise, we should be committed to addressing them.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. That's pretty much, that was my question. Thank you.
Dr. Bradbury. Again.
Sorry. Hi, Ms. Faring. Thank you. It's really been helpful to have you here discussing it and trying to hash some of this out, and I appreciate your time. The out-of-state blood products, one of the reasons I was bringing it up is there's a couple of specific blood products that aren't your typical plasma, packed reds, things like canine albumin, I think some of the platelet products that there's been barriers for us to be able to get them and use them. And it is better for our patients to use canine albumin, for example, than to use human albumin if they need it, say a septic abdomen or something that's going to surgery. There's some greater risks with the human albumin products, but we can't get the canine albumin because it's an out-of-state blood product. And I would welcome being able to use that, but I am worried that perhaps if those products are then, I'm not worried. I don't know if this has been thought about. If products like that are still better for the dogs and the animals in California to have available, if they're produced in a closed colony, are those then going to be banned, these specialized products, or is there some way to have a little bit of gray area for specialized products like that. And it's just something to consider moving forward as you guys are writing this very ambitious bill, which I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. And I appreciate all the work there. So.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we've thought of the imports, which is something CVMA had raised from earlier on I think we think of it as like a valve for where in-state, may come up short as a valve, but I guess maybe I'm being overly optimistic. My hope is that if there's a demand for products like that, and there are now going to be vastly more than 2 entities within the state that are eligible to produce it and sell it, that you ought to be able to get that product from in-state sources. That's the goal. I mean, that's the overarching goal of the whole bill, is to try to expand that, and it shouldn't just be limited. One of the reasons that the latest amendments changed the trigger to not just be whole blood units collected, but the RBCs and fresh frozen plasma was feedback from concerns, just like you're mentioning. Those are the 3 kind of biggest. So I know there are niche products, but we heard what they had to say about only following whole blood might not help. They might not feel as confident about being comfortable with the closed colonies, or, being closed down before there was ample amounts of all 3 of those product types being produced from the community blood banking. So I think we worry about getting into too niche-y when it comes to the trigger itself, but I think for the valve of the imports, if that's something, it's all super complicated. It seems like fix one thing and it creates another issue, but I would be happy, and I'm sure the author would be happy, to take into consideration that concern and think about whether there's a way to address it without creating a different kind of issue. I hear what you're saying.
You think there's another public member?
There is. Nicholas Sackett. Nicholas, your line is open.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Jennifer. I think I just wanted to mention a couple things. One was the restricting the donor dogs from being owned by some entity other than a person. I think our concern was that you could easily create 2 entities, one owning the dogs and then the other one collecting the blood, but in essence it would be a closed colony. Certainly the idea of shelters allowing the dogs to give blood on its face seems benign and fine, but certainly would be concerned about loopholes in the law if that were allowed. So open to looking into that further. One concern that we have on the trigger language that we have conveyed to the author's office is the requirement that the trigger be based on community blood banks selling the blood versus producing the blood. But that is something that we will continue to engage the author's office and Jennifer and the other stakeholders on. But just want to acknowledge that is a little bit of a concern, just because we're not sure how community blood banks will be able to compete in marketing and actually getting their blood products sold versus being able to produce it, which it's a fine line, but there is a difference in the 2. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that so folks know that it is a concern of ours. In addition to, opening up to out-of-state imports, will that then make it much harder for community blood banks to compete in the market when you have out-of-state closed colonies selling it into the state as well? That could delay the phase out as well. So just concerns that we have, but definitely we are engaged with Jennifer, other stakeholders, in Bloom's office. So thank you for having me and having us speak on it today.
And with that, we have no additional requests for comment. I would like to, as I close the Q&A panel, if I could ask Jennifer and Nicholas if you could please lower your hands so that we don't continually call on you.
And then is Jennifer's hand up, or is her hand just resting on her head?
No, I did have a question. I know they're muted now, but for the last speaker, Nicholas, he had said we had concerns. I'm trying to keep straight in my head who's who. I just wanted to know what organization he was representing.
Sure, social compassion and legislation. Yep.
Thank you.
And Kathy Buller?
I just, sorry, and I actually, if they're not raising their hand, so maybe they're not interested. I thought CVMA was still on the call, and I'm wondering if they have anything to add to the comments about the bill.
Is CVMA still on the call?
Grant Miller has chimed in. Grant, your line is open.
Hi, thank you very much. Jennifer really encapsulated our conversations well. We found that the author's office on this bill has been very receptive to listening to some of our concerns with the bill, and they're grappling with some of the same questions we are, such as, when will this trigger actually occur? How will it occur? How will we accurately quantify blood and blood products? And also, will there be a mechanism for out-of-state entities to more easily ship products into California? Our number one concern has always been with this bill to preserve both the safety and the quantity of blood and blood products in California. And we're very grateful to the author's office for teaming up with Senator Wilk on this bill. Jennifer and her group, as well as the other stakeholders, have done a really good job in being receptive to our concerns, and we will continue to work with them. This bill is a work in progress. It's far from done, but we feel that the most recent round of amendments that were included in the bill are a very good signal in the direction that the bill is going.
So I'm sorry, so is the CVMA in support of this bill or no?
We have an approved position, which is essentially, it's very similar. So,
okay.
So yes, essentially we're there. We will, however, Alana, continue to work closely with the author to ensure that some of our concerns are being addressed. But as Jennifer had mentioned, we've already had several meetings with them, and they're scratching their heads with the same things we are. So they're concerned about the same things we are, and we're all trying to figure out what is the best way to try to make this transition happen. But it's trying to predict the unknown. We don't really know, like, will the market step up?
Right.
And so it's just one of those things where we're doing our best with it, but nobody has all the answers. But at least we have a really strong author and a really educated group of stakeholders that have been working on this bill for several years now. So yes, we do have a approved position.
Great, thanks.
Can I?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add one more thing. You mentioned quality, quantity, of course. I think the third one is cost, to make sure for public, for the public consumers, the cost of the blood products has to be, consistent with what it is now. It can't go up extraordinarily, or that'll be, a problem for the public. So I assume that's also being considered in all of this.
What's the urgency right now? Timeline as far as taking a position? Kathy?
Well, it's this was just amended, and it has to go to ag, right? I believe. Well, Jennifer, so I'll have to look, but I think it was double referred to the ag committee. So we could either take a watch position, or and see how the amendments turn out, the continuing work on it. It's gonna be going through the assembly and then through into the Senate. So it's up to the board.
I'm in support of a lot of things in this bill, but I'm still a little bit hesitant as far as what we're committing ourselves to. That's my hesitation, because I don't know if we know exactly how much our commitment would be. And cost would be, and responsibility would be. But I'm in support of many, many things about this. So I would suggest wait, watch, but I'm also open for any motions.
What is the approved thing that the CVMA is doing? Well, how is that different than being in support? And is that something?
I can answer that. This is Dr. Miller. Christina, it's essentially no different. The difference is that in a support position, we will actively lobby the bill. We will actively write letters, speak at committee meetings. Approved just means if somebody asks us, we'll say, yeah, we're there, we're on board. In this particular instance, we have what's called an approved work with author or approved seek amendments, which is, essentially just saying, we have a few concerns, but because the author has been receptive from the beginning, because the stakeholders have said, like, we're interested in what you have to say, we don't really feel a need to, really trumpet the horn too loudly on this bill, because we're working in a good collaborative group. So it's essentially a support. That's really what it all comes down to. In the outside world, you have oppose, watch, or support. That's pretty much what it is out there.
Right, but you've taken a position of approve.
Yeah, Grant.
So
it's more of an internal dialogue for our lobbyists, because we have to kind of prioritize, where we're putting most of our energy. And so, at this point, if we're approached by it, this is what our position is, but we're not going out there and like leading the brigade on it.
Okay, Kathy?
Well, yeah, the only reason I would because I'm supportive of a lot of this bill. I think there's still some dialogue and some collaboration to be had with CDFA. And so tweaking some of the elements. So maybe watching how that works, and in the upcoming weeks, would be a good thing to do, since CDFA is really integral to this bill as well. But because it sounds like that's still in progress.
How about supportively approve?
Happily watch.
Happily watch?
No, I'm just kidding.
Approvingly watch.
Approvingly watch?
No, I think that watching makes sense, just because a lot of the things haven't been hashed out yet. But I think I agree. I'm in general support of the bill. It's just, I think there's a lot of details. Sorry about all that noise.
So approvingly watch is what we'd like to do.
How about just approve?
I think there's only three options: support, watch, or oppose.
So are we what are we doing? Is there a motion? Do I have to make a motion?
I suggested watch, but I'm waiting for a motion.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion. We support it.
Well, that's not an option. It's either, no, it is.
Oh.
It is, yeah.
I was like, what?
It's an option. Sorry, it's late. We have a motion.
I'll second that motion.
It's been motioned and seconded to support. Any additional comments from the board?
Yeah, it's Kathy. I'm the only thing I'm in concept in favor of this. and everything, I'm still a little concerned about the fiscal stuff and that whatever will happen to our board as a result of this. I appreciated Jennifer's discussion about the budget and the bill, and hopefully the willingness of the author to do that. But we're a fee-driven board, I believe, and I wish we had a little bit more detail on what this would entail for our board, because anything that gets added to our plate, worthy or, as worthy as it must be, as it is made, if we don't have the resources for it, it's going to impact somewhere else. So I don't know if Jessica has anything more to add about this. It's typically.
What if we do support if amended and funded?
Well, we could.
Because the author, Jennifer said the author intended to request funds for the upfront budget. So why don't we just support, unless we only support if we get that?
So an amendment would be the financial support, is what you're proposing?
Yeah.
Isn't it if we...
Since we don't know what we're committing to,
right,
that might make that a really difficult amendment to swallow.
My understanding is if we put support there, whatever we say after it is kind of nice, but it still says that we support versus oppose and so on. So that's how it's been in the past. I feel like we should watch because that is the most, that is very important. And if Jennifer's correct and they are willing to request funds with the language of the upon appropriations and make a budget request to cover the cost to getting this whole thing set up, then we would support it. But if we say support, I think that's all they hear, is my understanding. It'd be better to wait, not give the support until we actually see that in there, and then we can get behind it. That would be my take on it.
Okay. Does any other board members have any opinions on
I have one other thought that was suggested to me, and Tara, maybe you can tell me, or Jessica, can we support this in concept? Well, I mean, it may be possible to do that. We do support it in concept. It's the details, really.
Yeah, so I think in the past when the board hasn't taken firm positions, but they've supported in concept, and I think that actually happened with Senator Wilk's bill before, where we don't take an official position, but we still send concerns to the author's office to try to work through. So the board could do that. But I don't think the board's taken a support in concept without formally taking a support position.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Support means we support it. And I still am hesitant as to what we're getting ourselves into.
And I feel like I need to clarify again, and maybe I can just talk with Jennifer offline about how the board is funded. But again, even if the author's office intent is to allow us to get funds, working with the budget committee, the budget support committee, all that does is give us appropriation to spend existing funds that we have. So it doesn't give us a new source of funding. The only way we get funding is there are fees involved. So right now, the way it is, if there's appropriations for it, we can spend our existing money, but that doesn't give us an additional money.
Okay.
I thought I heard Jennifer say that the members were going to request funds for this, but again, I think that's kind of where I'm held up too, is I do support this in concept. I do want this to be successful, but I do think that we need to be fiscally responsible. So we do need to be really careful that we don't get ourselves in too deep.
Can Jennifer clarify?
Yeah, she might want to clarify that.
Jennifer,
this is the moderator. Jennifer, your line is open.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, what I can clarify is that the legislature literally right now is in the process of taking member requests. And Mr. Bloom, like other members, is making those requests, but he also happens to wear the hat of a subcommittee chair, that CDFA. is under, for example. But he has committed to doing a one-time, a request of one-time funds that would be, I mean, frankly, there's a scenario where that money gets funded in this year's budget before this bill even passes. So there are some details to work here, but the objective would be to be new one-time funds given to help stand this up to be successful. So it would not be a kind of wait for a BCP next year or rely on fees. His objective is to try to get a commitment of one-time funds to help this work. So I would happily connect, Jessica, with you offline to talk about functionally, like how to try to make that work. But that is the author's intent, to try to provide those resources.
Jennifer, this is Kathy. And Jessica may have, or Tara may have a better answer. This would be the first I've ever heard that we could get one-time general fund funds into a board for a project-specific situation. We weren't able to get it for, Breeze or a whole lot of other things that we had to deal with that all came out of the licenses. So I am certainly not an expert in the budget process, nor in the budgeting for DCA boards. But I was wondering if the staff might know if this, it could be his intent and that would be great. And it may be possible. I just don't ever recall us being able to get something like this before.
My time on the board, it's always been, we were told what to do and no money to do it. So it would be refreshing to have it the other way around, but I've never seen that happen.
So maybe Jennifer can clarify, from funds from where? Are you saying from the general fund?
Yes. And again, it's right now it's a commitment that the author has verbally made, like let's hash out the details, but and if it would have to go to DCA, where would it have to go in order to be able to kind of fund and exactly what you have to square up what you feel you need, because we don't have an insight into that yet. But I'm sure there would be a willingness to try to be creative within the framework of the law. But again, the intention of the author, as I've heard it expressed, is to not require the stand-up of this program to come from existing funds, or to make you wait for a BCP to move its way through the process next year.
So BCPs come from existing funds. So it'd be different getting it from the general fund that's paid by taxpayers versus our existing fund that's paid by our licensees. But we can work out the details.
Well, yeah, I've done a lot of been involved with a lot of BCPs. You specify the fund in the BCP, but I'm talking about future rather than waiting for the 22-23 budget and that process. That there is a desire to try to find current year funds to support the stand-up of this program. I'm sure it would be contingent on the passage of the bill, but.
Okay. I think we have to go back to open it up to public comments, because there's now been a motion to support this and it has been seconded, and we can open it up for more public comments on the motion.
This is the moderator. The Q&A panel is still open. If you'd like to make final. Go ahead, Tara.
Can we get clarification on what the actual motion is by Ms. Yanez? Initially, it was to support, and then it was perhaps support if funded. So what's the motion?
To support if funded.
Thank you.
And for members of the public, if you would like to make any final comments on this bill, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists.
Also, this is Tara. While we're waiting for a public comment, I believe it was Ms. Prado who was the second on this motion. Do you agree to the revised motion to support if funded?
I agree to second the amended motion to support if funded.
Thank you.
And seeing no comments, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
All right, so it's been motioned and seconded. And some skepticism has been raised about funding from the board comments. So let's call for the vote, please.
Ms. Bowler,
Support if funded. Aye.
Dr. Bradbury,
No.
Ms. Laredo,
Yes.
Ms. Prado,
Yes.
Ms. Yanis,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez, or sorry, Dr. Noland,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez.
No.
The motion carries.
All right. Let's move on to let's see, military board, veterinary medical board. We may want to think about supporting this one, but no.
Sunset?
What do you think, Jessica? Should we support it?
I would highly recommend a support position. This bill was a spot bill for a while and it was amended Tuesday evening to include the legislative proposals that the board has approves thus far.
Motion to support.
I'll make a motion to support.
I already made the motion. You can second it.
Then I will second it. Sorry.
Any discussion from the board? See none, moderator, if you please.
I have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this bill, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. Seeing none, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Been motioned and seconded. We've heard from the board and the public. Jessica, can you take the vote, please?
Ms. Bowler,
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury,
Yes.
Ms. Laredo,
Yes.
Ms. Prado,
Yes.
Ms. Yanis,
Yes.
Dr. Noland,
Aye.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Motion carries.
The next item is O, AB 1535. This one is easy. Jessica, would you like to present?
Sure. So the legislative proposal before you essentially changes all instances of the term diversion and changes it to wellness. So that's the extent of it.
It's kind of similar to a la carte versus transient, right? Just sounds better. I think it absolutely makes sense. I mean, the only thought is that there's been a lot of seminars on wellness that don't necessarily relate to substance abuse. That was my only pause, but I am definitely in support of this. Any motions?
Move support.
Second.
It's been motioned and second. Do any board members have any?
So just to clarify, we're not supporting anything now. It's just approving this legislative proposal and seeking it to be included in the sunset bill.
Okay, so the motion.
Oops.
Jennifer is to
approve.
And the second was from?
It was me, I think, and I'll approve.
Okay. Any additional comments from the board members? Moderator?
This is the moderator. We have again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the Ask field and submit that to all panelists. And seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Board has an opportunity to comment that as the public. Jessica, please call the vote.
Ms. Bowler?
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Ms. Prado?
Yes.
Ms. Yanes?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Does anyone have any comments on any of the other pieces of legislation? I really like SB 344. I think that's really nice.
Yeah, me too.
Anybody,
I love it.
anybody know more about that? I'm sorry for the noise, but has anyone heard more about that bill?
Kathy?
I haven't, I mean, no, I like this bill a lot, and I think for public protection and for pet protection, which is what we're all about, it's an important, I think it's very healthy bill for California, and I think we should take a position on it personally. I do think that there are a couple of people in the public domain here, Jennifer Fearing being one, that may want to comment on it as well if people have questions on it. But I don't know what you were asking about, Mark, if you were asking for us to take a position or what.
I would like to take a position for it. I love it.
Yep, this is Diane. I mean, I've heard about this bill, and I think it's great. There's a lot of unhoused people that are unable to access shelters because of their pets, and they won't leave their pets. And as we all know, a pet is part of the family, and everyone's deserving of a pet. And so in order to be able to get people into a shelter to then transition them into permanent and supportive housing, this is a great step forward towards that. And so I would also advocate to support this bill.
This is totally up your alley, Diane. So would you like the honor of making a motion?
I would make a motion to approve this bill.
And I'll
SB
second it.
344.
By approve, do you mean support?
We have to go back to support now.
Oh, yes.
I'll second supporting.
Yes.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded to support this bill. Are there any other comments from members of the board? Moderator, if you please.
This is the moderator. I have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" and then submit that to all panelists. We do have one request for Jennifer Fearing. Jennifer, your line is open.
Greetings again, everyone, on behalf of the San Francisco SPCA, San Diego Humane Society, Best Friends Animal Society. Let me just also say, this is my favorite bill of the legislative session, and it delights me to see so much enthusiasm. A little history, Senator Hertzberg got the idea for this bill 2 years ago from his neighborhood associations, all of whom were concerned about the well-being of their unhoused neighbors and their pets. And we did a bill, SB 258 that year, that was moving right along when the senator just included a budget ask of $5 million and basically got the program stood up through the budget. I'm happy to tell you that 28 programs were funded this year through that, and twice as many applicants for twice as much funding came through the program. And so the senator wants to codify the program. That's what this bill is. I would tell you that in our meeting that we had with most of the grantees, 90+% of the funding is going to veterinary care. So it's very fitting for your board to support this, because that's what the grants ultimately are going towards, supporting the healthcare and the wellness for these animals. And so, and it absolutely is having the kind of impact on helping. We've heard some really touching stories of one man told us that he had not come inside to sleep since the Northridge earthquake. Think about that for a second. But this program, and because it finally would accommodate his pet, allowed him to come in and seek services for himself that he desperately needed, because his animal he was comfortable that his animal would be taken care of in the process. So the senator is also seeking $10 million for this program as well. But anyway, you all seem poised to support it, but I just wanted to thank you for taking a position on it. And I think it's a very meaningful and timely effort.
See, I've always believed in my heart that everyone that comes to these meetings truly does love animals. And we also love the people that are on the other side of that human-animal bond. We can wholeheartedly agree on this. Any other comments from the public?
No additional comments. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. It's been motioned and seconded to support. We've heard from members of the board and members of the public. Jessica, can you call for the vote?
Ms. Bowler?
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Ms. Prado?
Yes.
Ms. Yanis?
Absolutely, yes.
What is wrong with her?
Dr. Noland?
Absolutely, yes, too.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Are there any other pieces of legislation that any of the board members would like for us to take a position on today?
Mark,
Yes.
I think SB 77, oh no, was it SB 772? Jessica can speak to that, but that one would be a problem for our board, I believe.
Yeah, I think, so what this board does is it removes the ability for the board to assess that citation under certain conditions. And I can just read it for you guys. If the violation did not pose a serious health or safety threat, there is no evidence that the violation was willful. The licensee was not on probation at the time of violation. The licensee does not have a history of committing the violation. The licensee corrects the violation within 30 days from the date of notice of the violation is sent to the licensee. So in theory, I understand what they're trying to get at, but I think that the citations are already heavily regulated through existing appeal rights and existing law. And there are times where we need to assess a fine to incentivize compliance. Citations are only there for incentivizing compliance. They're not meant to be punitive. And I think that the ability to assess that fine is a really good enforcement mechanism for the board to incentivize that compliance. When you remove that fine, there's not a lot of incentive to comply anymore. And so that would be my concern, is that it's removing a tool that's very useful for the board. We are, like I said, heavily regulated with certain conditions that we have to take into account with each and every case and each and every violation. So it is already heavily regulated. Removing this ability, I think, would be a disservice for enforcement.
So it sounds like you're suggesting an opposed position.
That would be my recommendation.
I would like to make a motion to oppose this.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded to oppose.
This is Tara. Who was the second?
Kathy.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the board? Here none, moderator, if you please.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on the screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Seeing none, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
There's still 24 people still on. I'm impressed. Or 37 people. Okay. It's been motioned and seconded to oppose. We've heard from the board and the public. Jessica, please call for the vote.
Ms. Bowler,
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury,
Yes.
Ms. Laredo,
Yes.
Ms. Prado,
Yes.
Ms. Yanis,
Yes.
Dr. Noland,
Aye.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Right. Any other bills? A board member has a opinion on? Okay, then we can move on to agenda item 8A. Status of pending regulations. There's a new chart. It's not as colorful as ones have been in the past, and the font is very small. But it's a new chart, and I think we have. Who's going to present this?
We have Justin Sotelo, our lead administrative and policy analyst.
There's Justin.
I'm here. Okay, thank you. If I could please share my screen, that would be great. Okay, there we go. Everybody can see that?
I can see it.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll keep this update pretty succinct and straightforward. As you know, this is a quarterly update to the board on recent regulatory actions that have occurred, and updates since the last meeting. The memo pretty much addresses all of the recent updates since January. The big update that I want to start off with is that we've had 3 recent approvals by the Office of Administrative Law, 3 packages approved. The first one is listed here on page 1, the RVT Emergency Animal Care proposal. And Dr. Nunez had requested at the last meeting that we provide a summary of each of these proposals, just because of the number that we move through the process and the time it takes in moving these through. So we've provided a brief summary of each proposal here. So the first one, RVT Emergency Animal Care, was approved by OAL on March 2nd. The changes become effective on July 1st. So that is the first one. Move over to page 2, the VCPR's proposal.
Justin, can I ask you a quick question? When it
Yes,
becomes official on July 1st, does that mean we can cross it off this chart?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that box at the end, we can fill it in with green shade and cross that one off the list. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good.
So yeah, I'm happy to report that we have 3 green boxes on these first 3 here. So VCPRs.
And we get a prize. We get a prize when we reach the finish line.
Bingo.
Like the game of life.
Yeah, exactly. So VCPRs approved by OAL on February 11th. Those changes became effective April 1st. And again, a summary here of what that proposal does. The next one was the RVT job tasks proposal that was approved by OAL on February 9th. That became effective on April 1st as well. And again, just a brief summary of what that proposal does here. Our fee schedule certificate of compliance proposal. I'm happy to report that since this memo was prepared, this package was approved by agency on April 16th and submitted to OAL on just 2 days ago, actually. So it is in their hands at this point, and they have 30 working days to review and hopefully approve this proposal. So happy to say that this one is almost at the finish line.
This is Tara. I think if I'm correct, and Karen Halbo, your reg counsel, might have more information, but OAL may have an extension of time to review and approve packages because of the declared state of emergency. So it may not be 30 days. That would be really cool if it was. Not be.
Tara, I've actually been in contact with the reviewing attorney as of yesterday, and I was told that that does not apply to CERT packages. So, so yeah, we don't, but we do have the benefit in that the reviewing attorney has been the same reviewing attorney that reviewed the emergency regulations. So he should be very familiar with this proposal. So, but yes, he was told, or I was told yesterday that the extension does not apply to certificate of compliance packages. So the next one listed here is the animal physical rehabilitation proposal. As you know, at the last board meeting, the board approved responses to comments for this package. It was moved through DCA, approved by the executive office. It is now with agency as of April 20th. So that's the status on that one as well. Jessica, did you want to chime in at all on that one?
Nope. Just to say that I know that the DCA director has been watching this closely, has met with some stakeholders on this, and I think that she had approved it on a Saturday, and then it was submitted to agency, like Justin said, on the 20th.
So the table is, we need to fill in a couple more boxes on the table provided?
Yes. Yeah, so since we prepared that spreadsheet, yeah, we do have a few more boxes to fill in. So yes, Jessica is correct. That was approved by the DCA director on Saturday the 17th and then submitted to agency on the 20th, 2 days ago.
So move forward 2 spaces.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. The next one listed here, drug compounding. As you know, you at your last meeting approved responses to be included in the final statement of reasons. This final package is actually queued up. I just have a couple of final details to finalize on this, and then that will be submitted to DCA here very shortly, and then making its way through the final process reviewed by DCA agency, and then next to OAL at that point. At our last meeting, the board approved the MDC's recommendation to withdraw the duties of a supervising veterinarian proposal. That was noticed on our website and published with OAL on March 19th. So that has officially been withdrawn. And then disciplinary guidelines, again, at the January meeting, the board approved some text modifications. That is prepared to be noticed for another 15 days. Once that 15-day public comment period is completed, we can then put together the final rulemaking package and move that one forward as well.
And this is Kathy on that disciplinary guidelines. I'm hoping, I mean, since we started that saga like 6 years ago, it seems like, are we hopeful that now we're on the kind of final stretches? We've made all the tweaks we're going to need to make, and we can actually move this to final reg sometimes?
That's my understanding. Unless Jessica, you have any other.
So that's the idea that, yeah, that's the idea. The first round of public comments that we put out, or I'm sorry, the public comment period, we didn't receive any public comment on it. So once we do it for 15 days, we don't anticipate public comment. If we do receive adverse public comment that we have to respond to, those would be coming back to the board in July. But again, we're not anticipating that.
And Kathy, animal rehabilitation is 10 years old.
Well, that's true. I keep getting confused because we did these guidelines so long ago. And then when we do disciplinary things, I'm remembering what's in effect and what's not, because I keep thinking those should have been in effect. So it's just my own small brain. Sorry.
No, yeah, my hope is that we're at the final stages of the process with these. Once we get those modifications out for 15 days, like Jessica said, we don't anticipate any comments. We didn't receive any public comments during the 45-day public comment period. So our hope would be to just finalize the package at that point and then move it forward through DCA and agency.
And Kathy, you have a very big brain.
And then the final item on this list, again, as you recall, you approved some legislative and regulatory proposals related to the elimination of the CSBE. These, our hope would be Section 100 non-substantive changes, but we can't move forward with these until the legislative proposal or the legislative changes take effect in early next year. So these are just kind of in the queue, but just an update since last meeting. And then again, yes, I'll take note, Dr. Nunez, of your comment in the small font here. It is an issue with me as well. But as I mentioned, I'm glad that we're seeing a lot of these on this page moving forward, seeing more green boxes. So hoping to close out a few more of these in the coming months. And then it is my goal, we do have another 10 proposals here on the second page that I would then like to shift my focus towards once we can finalize the items here on this first page.
Yeah, Kathy, I think we were on the subcommittee for uniform standards for substance abusing licensees. We need more boxes on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like ages ago too.
It was.
Justin, I like your chart. I think that we can zoom in on the small print and figure out what it says. But I like it because it all fits in there and it's a good visual, and I really like it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's all I had for my update, unless there are any additional questions.
I forgot we had that Zoom button. We can zoom. I can see it. Okay. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Are you going to present the next one as well? Or is that back to Jessica?
I think it's back to Jessica for that one.
This one is also pretty straightforward.
Before we move on, we need to take public comment on what Justin presented.
Okay, sorry about that. Moderator, if you please.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Okay, so the next one is pretty straightforward. All we're requesting is a regulatory proposed language that changes the terminology right now under 2039. It refers to California Animal Control Directors Association and the State Humane Association of California. Those two entities have merged into California Animal Welfare Association. So there's two instances of those names. So we're asking for approval of the proposed regulations and to put it into a Section 100 rulemaking package, which just like the ones that Justin had just touched on related to our elimination of the CSBE, it would be non-substantive. It doesn't have any kind of regulatory effect. It's just cleaning up the language. And so the proposed action is on page 1 of your memo.
So section 100 is like an advanced to go card. You're just gonna go past all the little steps and go straight to the end.
Right. Yes.
The express
Just
train.
the form. Mm-hmm.
Do we have, so we have to.
I'll go ahead and make a motion if you'd like me to. Can you read it?
Go ahead.
It says yes, okay. I motion to approve the amendments to CCR Title 16, am I right, on the right page? Section 2039, and direct the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the Section 100 rulemaking process, make any technical or non-substantive changes to the rulemaking package, and adopt the proposed regulatory changes.
And I'll second it.
That was very well read.
For so late in the day, right?
It's been motioned and seconded. Are there any other comments from the board? Hearing none, moderator, could you open it up for public comments on my Chihuahuas bark?
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon. I can't even speak anymore today. Q&A icon on your screen. Type, I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
We're going to ignore my Chihuahuas. They do not have a right to an opinion because they did not read the package. Let's call for the vote, please.
Ms. Buller?
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Ms. Prado?
Yes.
Ms. Yanis?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Aye.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. We've reached the end of day one. And it's only 4 o'clock. So we are now in recess until tomorrow at 9 a.m. See you all then. Thanks for coming.